Hi, this is Dr. Nemechek in Buckeye, Arizona, and I want to talk to you today about this kind of pathway, this process towards becoming neurotypical, or as I like to say, as normal as any kid in the park, and then how your child will develop resilience over time. So, what happens as kids start recovering? So, say pre-protocol, you've got some kind of level of progress, and it's real, but it's kind of slow and not much going on. Quite typically, though, once you start the protocol, you'll see this change. The therapists or the teachers or just family, they're like, wow, things are different. There's some shift happening here. And so you start seeing this now improvement that's happening at a different level. It's very exciting, I'm sure. And then everybody feels a little heartbreak because you're going to go along and then suddenly, boom, things get worse. Okay? And that's from some kind of relapse. It's either an inflammatory kind of thing. It could be a trauma, for cumulative brain injury. And remember, those can be physical things. They can be emotional events you might not see. It could be some bullying at school. In a restroom or something where nobody's around. It could be, a child just being excessively frightened. Then there are inflammatory kind of injuries, and that could be an infection, maybe surgical procedure if that's necessary, and so forth. But you're going along, you're getting better, and you're going to have these little events. Boom. Now, you don't change doses because we already know the dose was enough to repair, okay? You don't need to change the dose. So you get a little worsening from some event, and don't panic if you don't see it. Sometimes they're subtle things, but what will happen is in the next week or two, because we already know the dose is good enough to get your child to repair themselves, in the next week or two, they repair themselves out of that. And then you're going to go along more, and then something else is going to happen. And boom, they get a little worse. Don't change the dose. You just keep waiting. Week or two, boom, they come out of that, and you kind of keep going and going and going. So it can take kind of a sawtooth kind of, if you're mapping out a score every day, you could have this like process going okay, down and up, going okay, down and up. And that graph would kind of look like a little sawtooth kind of up and down kind of event. Now, let's say we reach neurotypical, and it could be, say, in speech, but not you might still have some motor problems or something like that. It's just any aspect. Once you get up and you've reached some kind of normalcy, your child is functioning as well as, other kids, they still aren't very resilient. They can still, a mild stress on the brain can cause a significant kind of loss of function, all right? Because even the healthiest brain, if we have a severe emotional event, we're going to have a brain injury. We're designed, that's what happens, and then we recover out of that. But as your child's going along, and they still aren't really strong, even though they're starting to act more and more normal, they still aren't that strong. Now, so you reach that, now as you go along this normal plateau, what happens is with time, they become stronger. They're more resilient to these things. They're more resilient to when they fall and hit their head. They're more resilient to when something emotionally happens. They're more resilient to when they get an infection. And so the amount of loss of function in that week or two is less. And instead of taking a week or two, it might be 4 days. And then after a while, it might be 2 days. And then pretty soon, the resilience can seem as normal as your other children. Okay, or other children So the recovery process, you're going to have these ups and downs, okay? And don't panic if you don't see what it is, okay? The protocol doesn't really quit working, okay? Especially if it was working 2 weeks ago and everything was kind of improving. You just wait, and they come out of that. You don't have to change the doses or anything. And then once you get up there and you reach this kind of neurotypical, the normal kid in the park phase, as I call it, the resilience will build over time. Okay, don't get frustrated. You've got to have a long look at this, and so they'll get and they just get stronger and stronger and stronger. All right. So I hope that's helpful to you. This is Dr. Nemechek of the Nemechek Protocol in Buckeye, Arizona. You all have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye.